All right, let's cut straight to it. Picture this. A little boy, 8 years old, burned hands, dragging his unconscious 4-year-old sister through 3 miles of deserted streets at dawn. Desperate, lost, yeah. That actually happened. And I'm telling you now, the real story is messier and more gut-wrenching than anything you could dream up. So let me back up a sec because the way it all played out, it'll stick with you, trust me. Dawn in that tiny flat meant light crept in slow, filtering through dirt-smudged glass, landing on a carpet so tired it had long forgotten what color it was supposed to be. That's where Tommy Hartwell, yeah, just Tommy lay perfectly still, not because he was lazy, but because every morning started with listening. Not for birds or an alarm clock, but for the sounds that let him know whether today was survival or disaster. Downstairs, the front door always gave itself a wide creak, a thud, heavy feet that could only mean one thing. Frank Hartwell, his dad, stumbling home from another night at the pub, bottle clinking, muttering curses that'd make a sailor turn red. Tommy never looked, but he knew 12 steps, stumble at number 9, always did. You get to be an expert at knowing how much someone drank just by the way they walk, and 3 bottles meant his dad would pass out till noon. That was gold a few hours where Tommy could breathe, maybe even pretend to be a kid. He slipped out from his blanket-faded red. Used to be a Manchester United cover, back when his mom still pretended Christmas was a thing and tiptoed over to Lucy. That's his little sister, for years old, tangled blonde hair, always clutching this ragged old teddy bear with a winking button eye. They called him Mr. Buttons. That bear, man, he was more than a comfort. Tommy had stitched a hidden pocket in him, hiding a battered old phone he'd fished out of a dumpster, something with a working voice recorder. You want to know why a kid hides a phone in a teddy bear? Because life in that flat was a roll of the dice every night, and evidence proof came his one card to play. Tommy'd started recording the bad stuff, the yelling, the smashing bottles, the threat stuff nobody believed a kid about. Yeah, he was just a kid, but he was careful, methodical. Every bruise, every threat, every "no one will believe you" went on that phone. He'd wake Lucy gently. "Time to get up, sunshine," he'd whisper. She'd be alert, eyes darting to the door. In houses like theirs, kids learn to be ready fast. On a good morning, he'd feed her whatever he could find, maybe some stale bread and jam, maybe milk that wasn't quite off yet. He'd joke about it being like a proper breakfast, make her tea with the last grains of sugar, just to coax a smile. Quiet mornings, when Frank was sleeping, were like finding coins in the gutter, rare and worth more than they should be. Tommy took care of Lucy, dressed her in whatever clothes weren't too dirty, did her hair in crooked pigtails. Their mom, Sharon, had walked out 2 years ago, left a note on an old bill. "I can't do this anymore. You're better off without me." Tommy never showed Lucy the note. He just kept it with his treasures under a loose floorboard, next to the phone, and every scrap that proved their world was real. But that morning, things got ugly fast. Frank woke early. The man's anger came in waves, sometimes simmering all day, sometimes exploding out of nowhere. Tommy moved Lucy to their hiding spot, tiny, behind the water heater, cramped but safe, just in case. He wiped away crumbs, hid the jam jar, anything to avoid his dad's wrath. But Frank was looking for a fight. He ranted about rent, about being let down, about how the world owed him. And Tommy, well, he learned the hard way it was safer to just apologize no matter what. It was always the same old pattern: blame, anger, and then danger. And that night, the tension in that flat was electric. You know what I mean? The kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up before a storm. Frank got it in his head that Tommy was lying, hiding things, plotting with Lucy. He barged into their room, wild-eyed, and this time, he wasn't just yelling. He saw red, went after Lucy, and Tommy jumped in the way. There was a boiling pot. Frank, flailing, knocked it flying. Tommy caught the scalding water on his hands to shield Lucy, but some splashed on her too. The pain, Tommy said later, it was like fire chewing through his skin. Lucy went limp, hit her head, and dropped, just gone like someone flipped a switch. Frank sobered up just long enough to realize he'd gone too far, but then classic Frank made it about Tommy. "Your fault. You made me do this. Clean up. Don't tell anyone." Then he just walked out, left those kids in the chaos, hands blistered, sister unconscious, no help coming. Tommy could have frozen, but he didn't. He got that hidden phone, hesitated for a split second because calling for help would mean exposing everything, the secrets, the threats, but then he saw Lucy, barely breathing. The choice wasn't really a choice. He called emergency services, stumbled through the story, begged for help. My sister's hurt. She won't wake up. My hands theory burned too. You ever see how fast paramedics move when a kid's life's on the line? They arrived, swept in, took stock. Burned hands, a 4-year-old unconscious, signs of old bruises, the flat looking like a war zone. The phone, tucked in Mr. Buttons, with those recordings 17 of them became the linchpin, the reason the paramedics called the police right then and there. They listened, jaws set, faces pale. It wasn't just an accident, and everyone knew it. Frank, of course, showed up halfway through, drunker than before, spouting lies. It was an accident. Kids were playing, but this time, Tommy found his voice. That's not what happened. The recordings played, Frank's threats echoing through the flat. The cops stepped in, and for once, the adults believed the kids. Frank was cuffed, taken out screaming about betrayal, but Tommy didn't flinch. He just looked at his dad, really looked and saw a broken man, not a monster. Pity, maybe, but no more fear. Lucy woke in the ambulance, scared, asking where their dad was. Tommy told her, honest for the first time. He's gone. He can't hurt us anymore. She clutched Mr. Buttons, asked if he was okay too, because in a world that hurts, you hang on to what you can trust. The next week's hospital rooms, questions from social workers, police interviews felt unreal. Tommy's hands healed slowly. Lucy's concussion faded. The evidence in that phone meant no more living with secrets. Social services found them a foster family, James and Margaret Shun, people who'd seen pain before, who knew how to put kids back together. Their house sunlight, books, a big orange cat named Biscuit looked like something out of Tommy's fairy tales. The Chins were gentle. Margaret read to Lucy every night. James showed Tommy how to plant seeds, how things grow with patience and care. They never pushed, never asked more than the kids could give. Lucy talked again about stories, about Biscuit, about hope. Tommy, slowly, learned to draw, filling sketchbooks with dragons, castles, and knights. Real magic, he realized, wasn't in fairy tales, it was in a warm meal, a quiet night, a promise kept. 3 months later, the Chins asked if they'd like to stay forever. Adoption real, permanent, safe. Tommy hesitated, scared of believing in something so good, but Lucy didn't. Does that mean you'll be our mommy and daddy? She asked. Margaret just smiled. If you want us to be. Papers signed, hearings held, Frank's rights gone. He'd gotten 4 years in prison and an order never to contact them again. On the day the judge made it official, Tommy wore his first real suit. Lucy spun in a purple dress. The judge's kind eyes, silver hair told them they were now the Chins, forever and always. There were tears, relief, joy, something that felt like coming home for the first time. That night, around a table filled with cake and laughter, Tommy finally believed it. The old stories he told Lucy about castles and dragons and happy endings, maybe they'd been half true after all. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't all sunshine. There were nightmares, tough mornings, slow healing. Trust doesn't grow overnight, not after years of fear. But in that house, real, flawed, messy love grew anyway. Tommy drew, Lucy read, Biscuit purred, and every night they slept knowing footsteps in the hallway just meant someone checking if they want a glass of water, not trouble. So, yeah, maybe there's no such thing as a perfect ending. Maybe there's no magic wand to erase scars or fix what's broken. But there's this kids like Tommy and Lucy can find their way out, with help, with a little luck, with people who care enough to fight for them. And when you see a family that looks picture perfect, remember sometimes the bravest thing in the world is just believing things can get better. Now, here's the real question. What would you have done? Would you have believed a kid with a story like Tommy's? Or looked away like so many others did? That's the kind of thing that sticks with you, you know? Because sometimes the fight for justice, for safety, for love, it starts with listening, really listening, even when it's easier not to. If this story makes you feel something, anger, hope, sadness, whatever, say it out loud. Share your thoughts. Let's talk about what's right, what's wrong, and what it really means to protect the people who need it most. Maybe, just maybe, that's how you help someone else find their way home.